Welcome to Silverstone Technology Cluster's Ask the Expert podcast. I'm Jeannie, your host. The mission of the STC is to support advanced engineering, electronics and software businesses, and we're always keen to share industry insights and knowledge. So in each episode, we sit down with seasoned professionals and industry experts to uncover valuable knowledge, share real-world experiences, and explore smart strategies for navigating the challenges of modern business in advanced engineering. So this episode is brought to you by TC Group, a leading firm of accountants and business advisors with offices in Northampton and Milton Keynes. And today I'm thrilled to be at TC Group again. I'm joined by Keir and Waddy from TC Group. So thanks for joining me, guys.
Hey, thanks very much for having us.
So today, let's get straight into it. We're here to talk about HR and debunk some of the myths that are going around with what's coming in. So can you just tell me a little bit about, there's a lot of anxiety from business owners to these new legislations coming in. Is it fair to say that it's just another burden and something else for employers to worry about?
I think there's probably been a bit of a raised expectation about these legislation changes coming because this is certainly the biggest piece of legislation change that has happened in sort of 10 or 15 years from an employment perspective. So I think there was quite a lot of clamour and noise around it when they first got announced back in October last year, and then it went quite quiet. So I think that then what has happened is that people have tried to fill the gaps in themselves a little bit with some of those bits, and for some people that means that it's been something that's become much bigger than it probably actually is, and for other people it's something that they're probably taking a little bit too lightly. So we've certainly seen both sides of it from clients. Yeah.
Okay, and what would you say to businesses and owners that are feeling a bit overwhelmed or worried?
Just not to worry. It's not, just take it slow. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just about gradually changing your processes, having a look about what is changing now so you can put that in place and think about what changes you want to make when it all comes around.
Okay, and what can actually be said about maybe some benefits that are going to come out of this legislation?
I think there's going to be pieces of pieces of legislation that maybe do have some gaps still, and that it's going to provide more clarity for both employers and employees in terms of some of the processes, things like flexible working. There's a lot of benefits for employees that come in there, but actually for employers, there is going to bring some clarity around some of those points. Maternity leave, paternity leave. They're going to, get some better buy-in from their employees, more engagement. That's going to lead to hopefully increased productivity from the employees, which is great for everybody.
Okay, and is there a way that employers can turn these legal changes into kind of a competitive advantage or an edge for themselves?
I think probably trying to get in front of the legislation and sort of getting their employees and managers sort of quite embedded into what the changes are going to be quite early will certainly help. And I think sort of looking at the way that the legislation is going and for the businesses to try and reflect and actually say, look, is there anything that we can do to enhance some of our own current policies that fits alongside this, that will actually go that step further so that they're sort of standing out from the crowd in terms of being a great employer that's going to attract the best people.
And actually, if you look at the flexible working changes, if businesses embrace it and get on board with it, it's a really good thing. People really appreciate the work-life balance. And again, it goes back to Bruce's point of that increases your productivity. So if these businesses get on board with that ahead of the curve, then, that's going to put you ahead of the game in terms of retention and attraction.
Yeah, of course. It makes it a better workplace and people are happier coming to work.
People being happy then it usually is a good sign. Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Definitely.
So one of the big headlines that we've been reading is about the unfair dismissal rights starting from day one. Is that the case?
No, that's not going to be the case. The 2-year period is going to be reduced, but you could manage your employees through a probationary period. So as long as you are managing them fairly and transparently through that probationary period, you still have that chance to manage and dismiss an employee if it's not working out during that time.
So given the changes, what can employers do when they have underperformance or conduct issues? What is actually changing?
So well, from as Kate mentioned, the probation period is going to become probably even more important than it currently is. There's going to need to be a robust process sort of that you go through to assess the level of performance during that probation period. But I think then in terms of then sort of outside of the probation period, is that sort of where you mean sort of talking that piece that probably just reinforcing some of the stuff that the business should already be doing, having some performance management processes that goes through and assesses regularly and accurately the performance of their employees, and then taking steps to put things in place that will support the employee in being successful. So that means sort of ensuring that they are regularly communicating with the employee, that they're providing regular training, they're assessing sort of what's required within the role, and regularly updating the employee as to those things, so that they can then take some action. Because the big thing that we often see when we're talking to clients around sort of that performance management piece, the communication is usually the key thing that's gone, that there hasn't been that communication between the employer and the employee, or the manager and employee. And it's really, really difficult for anybody to do anything if they're not sure of what they should be doing, or they're not being told that they're not doing something correctly. So that's going to be key.
Yeah, so maybe it's more of an opportunity than something to be scared of, because you can actually get a lot of good processes in place now, which will help.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some of the stuff that we're talking to clients about at the moment, in terms of actually let's get that performance management process sort of correct, and move probably away from it being something, and again, it's quite often seen as a negative in terms of, we wanted to discuss my performance, you want to put something in that's going to improve my performance. That really want to try and shift that sort of that mentality away from it being something that it is a negative, to being something that actually it's a positive, because you're improving as an individual. Then it's gonna be great for your career.
And also looking at your manager's capabilities. So are your managers up to scratch? Like, do they know the processes, and are they capable of having those difficult conversations when they come about? And actually, are they capable of having those positive conversations as well, giving that praise where the praise is required, and also having those difficult conversations?
So carrying on from your point, actually, Katie, works in really well. If you have businesses that already have really solid sort of HR practices in place and think this won't affect them, is that a safe assumption?
No, there are changes that are coming up that people need to be aware of, even if your policies are tight at the moment. The flexible working is changing, giving hours to casual workers, that's changing. And it's just about getting the whole business on board and the communication to the whole business.
Yeah, and I think for any business, probably not just from a HR perspective or in these legislation, if you're sort of stood still for too long, you're going to end up getting left behind. So I think again, that's something that we regularly were doing with clients, sort of looking and ensuring that they are, they've got the knowledge that they need to be able to then sort of make changes to their processes that are going to benefit them as a business and benefit the employees. So I think just that should be good best practice anyway, just to be sort of continuing to review where you are as a business from your employment perspective, and making those changes to improve.
Okay, so what we're also talking about, it's not just legal changes. You're talking about cultural shifts and making workplaces more positive. Is that what this is aimed at as well?
Whether it's probably it's probably something that comes as part of the changes, but I think certainly again, harking on about the way that we're talking to clients at the moment, but it will need to be a sort of that cultural change will need to happen. It's going to need to be something that probably for some businesses changes from a very sort of transactional employer-employee relationship to being a more sort of inclusive and integrated relationship, where they're going to need to increase communication. There's going to need to be a lot of sort of small changes that then sort of create that bigger change, where they are certainly seen to be a better employer, and sort of the employees are then able to reap those benefits.
So you talked about best practice and companies constantly reviewing and changing. How often should companies be doing that and making sure that they are up to date with legislation and all the things that are coming in?
Ideally annually, but obviously with all of these changes coming up at the moment, just best practice to try and keep on top of it and be aware of the changes that are coming, so that they, if they've done their annual review and then changes happen, it's going to be another year. Don't let that be another year. So just be aware that there are a lot of changes coming up, and just kind of have that on your radar, so that those changes can be made once the legislation changes are made.
Yeah, and then sort of annually is great. I think typically sort of employment legislation tends to change around April and October in each year, with sort of that being announced around April. So if you're sort of looking at that and sort of looking for what legislation changes are coming out each year, probably annually in around April, is a great time to be looking at that.
So these legislation changes that are coming in, do they only apply to new recruits?
No, they apply to all employees, and it's definitely something that you need to be aware of. Businesses need to be aware of. It's not just the new recruits. You need to be applying this across your business. So, are your contracts and policies currently up to date, and will they be up to date when these changes happen for your current employees? That's something to consider.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's some of the focus at new employees. You think around probation periods and things like that, where things are changing, but a whole host of these are actually they're going to affect everybody.
Okay, so moving away from focusing on probation and new recruits, what can businesses do now to ensure that their current staff are covered under the new legislation?
Yeah, I think reviewing current processes, policies, and checking where sort of checking where they currently are. If you know where you are right now, then that enables you to then make those smaller changes, or in some cases may need to be bigger changes when anything changes. I think also sort of Katie mentioned it earlier on around sort of management capability. That's going to be a huge thing sort of for a lot of businesses, ensuring that their managers are able and capable to be able to manage under the new piece of legislation. So ensuring that the managers are aware of the changes that are coming and that they know where they can go to ask the right questions. They have some training, even in some of those softer skills as well that enable them to be able to manage the employees correctly.
Okay. And what kind of impacts could it have if businesses are ignoring their existing employees?
Well, the legal repercussions if you are ignoring the new legislation. The changes around the flexible working, if you're ignoring that, then the legal repercussions around that.
It's the potential for employment tribunal claims to be raised. The length of time that employees have to raise that is increasing as well. So certainly the employment lawyers we're speaking to, clients that we're speaking to, are expecting that there's going to be an increase in employment tribunal claims through this. The average cost of defending a claim is in and around £12,000. So it's quite expensive and very, very time consuming to do. So I think if there's certainly pieces of this and clients that mentioned it earlier that are sort of maybe downplaying it a little bit in terms of actually we don't need to be too worried about this right now. I think if they then sort of have a 18-month process that costs them in £12,000, but I think they will start to probably take a bit more notice of it then. And what we want to try and do is raise that awareness so that we're not getting to that stage with clients where they're not having those claims coming through and being raised, and they can do everything that they can to be able to stop them happening and prevent them happening in the first place. And then if they do come, then they've got a very robust case to be able to defend it.
Okay, so the advice is basically get in front of it. So
You don't want to be
have issues at the other
firefighting
end.
against this sort of stuff. You want to be ahead of the game, and you want to be making sure that you're legally compliant.
Yeah, definitely. And also probably aside from sort of the employment tribunals, obviously we want to have a happy, productive workforce. You don't want to have high turnover of employees. We all know it's very, very difficult to be recruitment costs being high. The ability to then sort of change your workforce is going to become increasingly more difficult, and there's going to be a more thorough, robust probation process that you're going to need to go through. That again is going to take more management time. So I think the less that you have to recruit and have to go through that process, the better. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So can you leave me with any final thoughts? Have you got anything else you'd like to add?
I think from my perspective, I mean, I think probably could speak about this all day about things, but I think from my perspective, really, it's just for the business owners, managers to be really, really aware that things are coming, things are changing. I think it's trying to find that sort of happy medium of not overreacting with it too much, because they have seen changes before and they will integrate in over a period of time, but they're not underplaying them. You don't want to sort of be left behind with making these changes and end up with employees that are leaving, employees that are unhappy, employment tribunal claims, that type of stuff. So I think trying to sort of ensure that you're aware of the stuff that's coming is the key point for me. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess predominantly it's that it's putting good modern practices in place rather than, not seeing it as a big scary change. Like, the changes are coming and you do need to embrace them, but actually it's for a good reason. They're just putting good practices in place to make the workforce a happier place, I guess.
Okay, and if anyone's worried about this, if anyone's concerned about their processes and needs some support, how do they go about doing that?
They can absolutely get in contact with us. Our details are all on our TC Group website. We can also, I'm sure, share some information that how they can get in contact with myself, Katie, and the team. There is, if they're looking for some free advice, there's lots of advice on the government website. It can be a bit tricky to navigate and get through and find the support that you're sort of looking for. That's where we can come in and help to make it a little bit more simple and straightforward for individuals.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you, Bruce and Katie, for your time today. It's been really interesting and actually really relevant, and I think so important for us to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of Ask the Expert. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I hope you picked up something really useful and got some inspiration along the way. If you enjoyed the conversation, please give us a like, a share or a rating on the platform that you're listening or watching on. Follow the Silverstone Technology Cluster on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast on Apple or Spotify. So if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear from you. If there's someone you'd like to hear from, if there's something you'd like to hear about, or a guest that you'd really like to see on the podcast, just send me an email, jeannie@silverstonetechnologycluster.com. Bye for now.